David obviously taking over from Harry Haslam back in 1978, January 1978. For me, my favourite period of football came from that 82-83 season when we thumped, well, didn't quite thump, but beat Notts County at home 5-3.
Yes.
And then we had those games, Liverpool 3 all away, Stoke 4 all away, and the Brighton 5-0 game. Probably my favourite period of football ever.
Yeah.
Likewise, Wayne, born and bred Luton, came through the Luton youth system. 84 appearances, was it? Couple of goals.
102. And more than 4 games you just spoke about.
Yeah.
I'll mention the overhead kick against Brighton.
But do mention the
52nd minute.
I don't suppose many people forget the Watford goal, though. I think. So yeah, some very pleasant memories. Anyway, you don't want to listen to me. I'll hand over and let David take the floor first of all, and then I'll let him talk for a little while, and then perhaps after the break we'll have some questions and answers.
Well, good evening everyone. Thank you for inviting me, and it's through my friendship with Wayne, and obviously he was one of our greatest utility players. And I have
So kind.
I have to say, if you can't transfer dates and times, but if he was here now, he'd probably be in the team regular.
Yeah.
But when he was in my team, or our team, should never say my, it was our team, Luton's team, we had such a good group of players, and I mean that he just couldn't get in the side. But he was so valuable, not just with his honesty, his addiction to the game. He was a very hard trainer from a boy of 14 from, was it Leagrave you came from, Wayne?
Yes, David, Chawney School you got me.
Chawney School. And because we had all the schools, we got the best players from the schools, there's no question about it at that time. And I was so proud of the boys that developed at Luton. And strange when you look back, we were able to keep them. There's one particular photograph that I've got, where on our front row were Mitchell Thomas, Tim Breaker, Gary Parker, Ray Daniel, and someone else who didn't quite make it. But it was a tremendous percentage of players who we projected and produced at this club into the first team. And it's one great disappointment of mine that if you look now at the big teams in this country, and the game is an uneven playing field, we'll talk about that later, but in the big teams, I looked the other week on a particular Saturday at all the teams and all the players. Leicester, Wolves, Tottenham, they didn't have one player who'd come through their own academy into their first team. There were 7 players that weekend that played in the Premier League who had come from school or from 16, 15. And I think that is a terrible situation in football, that it's just a transfer merry-go-round of players. And they're selling young players to sustain this financial viability that they've got at the moment, to raise money for overpriced players from the continent, where agents are heavily involved, and a lot of clubs, the big clubs, couldn't care less. But that's just one of my hobby horses. I've got a few more. I did come, I think we had a lovely dinner. Where was it, Wayne, when I gave the shoes away? To
Luton Who.
At Luton Who. No, it wasn't at Luton Who, Wayne. When the lady bought the shoes out the box, I remember it clearly.
Oh, was it down the...
it was behind the station.
The auction house, is it? Yeah, the auction house.
Yeah. Well, of course, if
125 years.
Now the new stadium is a big thing, and it will be a legacy for the club. This was always a problem for visiting clubs when we had a good team as well. But it was a problem because we could only get so many people in. And of course, I think mainly of your generation, when you look back at the attendances in the 80s, quite incredibly, they were low compared with how football's gone over the years. You know, I can remember playing Manchester United here. I think it was the game Mick Harford got the winner in the last minute. We had 12,000 people for Manchester United. And can you imagine that? And then you go back further to the Bob Morton and the Ron Bainham and Dave Pacey years, when they were getting 19,000, 20,000 and 25,000 for great cup ties, like in the 50s and the 59 cup final when they played Forest. So the game has changed so much, and so much of it has been towards the bigger clubs, whether it was Bosman, where players could more or less dictate their own terms, financial fair play. We used to go to Liverpool, it's a classic, and Liverpool looked down on us. I always remember it was a catalyst, that 3-3 at Liverpool, which was a wonderful game, and the supporters were wonderful and really superb to us, the way they clapped us at the end of that game. 3-3 against a wonderful Liverpool side, and we were terrific. But what I remember was the directors of Liverpool weren't too kindly towards us. They saw us a little Luton, and at that time they used to split the gates. It was 40-40 after expenses, something like that. So we had to share the 40,000 gate, which was great for us, but they didn't like coming to Luton when there's only 10,000. That's another problem. The big boys, and we now got a football regulator coming in, I've been asked about it already. Don't you worry whether she's from the Labour government or the Conservative government, we know where she's from, but she's already being schmoozed by the big clubs. The big clubs don't want a football regulator because they don't want supporters and supporters trusts on the board of directors. They want their exclusive club, and you've seen all these Americans coming in now and the foreign buyers, and they aren't, I'm not going to say they're spoiling the game, they aren't helping the game, because foreign owners means foreign coaches, means foreign players. There's only 4 clubs left now in the Premier League, which is Tottenham is one, Brighton is another, Brentford is another, and West Ham have a Czech who's got 28%, but West Ham still control their club. So every other club is foreign owned. And Trevor Birch of the EFL told me not long ago that two-thirds of the clubs in the lower leagues, and that's Division 1 and 2, are owned by foreign ownership. But that's just one aspect. But what it means is, referring to academies, is that they're less likely to encourage your own players, your own academy players, to go through and play first team football, because foreign coaches know foreign players, and they bring in foreign players to the exclusion of English boys that might have had an opportunity. And therefore, as Roy Hodgson said, and even, who was the last England manager? Wayne, is it?
Southgate.
Southgate, yeah, got the name. Sorry, Ian.
It wasn't Wayne.
Wake up, Wayne. But I think it was Southgate who said that in the next few years, we'll have less and less players to choose from, English players. But that's just one point. But anyway, I'm delighted to be here, and I appreciate you, and certainly all the people that have bought the book. It was a labour of love during COVID. I was going to write it during a career. People said, well, you've got some good stories, write it. And they said, well, if you wait too long, no one will know you. Well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The fact is that it gave me something to do during COVID, and I got it done, and eventually we found a publisher that was prepared to take a book that was more pages than they normally want to take. I'm just told publishers normally want a very good story, about 250 pages. So it wasn't easy to get a publisher, but I was very fortunate. And then, of course, with us donating half of it to motor neurone disease, I think that's helped because people realise it's for a good cause. Anyway, with all good intentions, Wayne, it's yours now.
Cheers, David. I was just there for you to drink. Well, going on the 2 points that David mentioned there, the first was a team that I played in, or I was in the squad of, for that period in the 80s, was a pure pleasure. If I look back at my career, it was daunting. It was daunting. Luckily, the 102 games, whatever I played, were, I think, 90 of them were in the top division. So my remembrance of that period was playing at all the big grounds, playing at all the top teams. Yes, being a bit of a polyfiller, but there was a period where I did get my favourite position for a season, which was middle midfield, and I loved playing there. Hence, got the goal against Watford. Got the goal against Brighton. Then he sold me, but I was in the way. But there was a situation where I remember playing in that team, and it was daunting. I remember going to Highbury. He asked me to mark Charlie Nicholas on his debut, just off the front, and Charlie Nick was flying around everywhere. 0-0 up to 2 minutes from time. Charlie Nick bundled one in off his kneecap, and that was my job failed, if you like. For 88 minutes I kept him quiet and part of the group. And I remember being sick in the Arsenal toilets before kick-off. I was so nervous. I I was so nervous. I was 22 years old, 22 years old, and I was so nervous because the prospect of this Charlie Nicholas, who's the superstar of Scotland, coming down, my man gave me the job to look after him, and I found it daunting. But luckily, when you go out on the pitch, all that goes. You just get your head down, you crack on. But it's the thought process of going to the game, how big it is, see what's going on, and it was daunting. But you get over that period, you go then into the game where you are in a good position with a manager, he decides to play you regular, you feel far better in yourself, and we had the semi-final at Villa Park. And if you talk about memories, of course the goals were brilliant, but if you talk about memories, I remember the gaffer said, "Go on Wayne, out you go lads, go and look at the pitch," like an hour before kick-off, and I couldn't wait, and I nicked a programme, looked at my programme, see what was going on, went out, a new mob were already out. 7,000 are in the whole end, and I come out of the tunnel and go, look at my programme and go, and all of a sudden the whole place erupts, and I go, that's when I lost my hair. And I turned round and no one else was there. You were actually, was it 17,000 or whatever the whole end, it was ridiculous. They were cheering me. And I went, oh my God, now you can imagine how I pooed my pants at Arsenal, how it affected you, but then you got this euphoria and this warmth in another stratosphere. So it was ridiculous feelings that you would go week to week, you know, and I've got to be honest with you, after every single game, when I was at my peak, I needed 1 pint of Red Stripe after the game. I needed to go, thank Christ for that. Because the pressure that built up in me all week to play at that level, I was never good enough in my head to be at that level. But I must have been, because I played 102 games and won, and we stayed in the top division, and I was part of that.
Yes.
And I had to deal with all the issues that come and coped. But the pressure was enormous. Luckily, I survived, and it helped me with my coaching. Because if we go now on to the local lads and we talk about coaching, which I did my A licence, I was the second one in the country to get my A licence with Steve McLaren. So us two got our A licences before anybody else. And what I used in all my coaching years was the experience, what it did to me mentally. So if I explain to my players now, the local ones we're trying to get into our first team, I say to them, when you're in the playground, when you're going through school and you're in the playground, you're the best player by a country mile. You're in our building because you're the best player in the playground. When you start out at 14, 13, even 9 now, it's ridiculous. But it's 90% ability, 10% mental strength. When you come into the building at 16, 17, 18 and start getting anywhere near the first team, it is 90% mental strength, 10% ability. Because you've got the ability now, you're in the building because of your ability, but what can you do with your ability? And by going through all the stuff that I went through mentally as a player, put me in great stead to be able to cope with lads who have to cope with the day-to-day and going into our first team, because it's not easy playing in front of you lot.
Some players can take it very easy. I remember Ricky Hill's debut against the Bristol Rovers. He was 17, scored 3-1, we won. I remember John Hartson. Nothing worried John Hartson. He was bullish. But I would say Wayne belittles himself, and that's Wayne. But as a character and as a person, they are vital to a dressing room too. And I was so lucky here, compared with I think now, that I had so many good players and they never wanted to leave. People say to me, why didn't you sell so-and-so? Why didn't you? Because they were so happy here, they liked it here at Luton. And when you look back at the 80s, a lot of those players played for 5-6 years in our team. And when we had to change players, like I remember when we had to sell Paul Walsh, for example, I remember when we had to sell Wayne. It wasn't because we really wanted to sell Wayne, although perhaps we did. The reason we had to sell Wayne probably was because we needed the money. I always remember John Hartson. I was with Colin Murphy very briefly as my assistant here in the second spell, and John Hartson, Telford, Pembridge, Kerry Hughes, good group of young players on the way up. And I remember Arsenal had rang me, David Dean and George Graham had both rang me and asked about Hearts, and David Dean had said, if we take him, would we be embarrassed? You know, they like, what's the word, confirmation that they're not signing up and getting. Anyway, we got him up to 2.5 million, but the bottom line was, I always remember Kohler coming into our room to Murphy and I said, we're not selling him, we're not going to sell him, we are definitely not going to sell him. And he went out the room, he came back, knocked at the door later, he said, if you don't sell him, I'll sell him. And that's what you've got to put up with sometimes by the chairman.
Yeah.
And people sometimes don't see that it is a business at the end of the day, and they have to keep the club surviving. So you have to have always a couple of younger players in the team, if possible, from your academy that you're projecting, so that maybe once every 2 years you have to sell one of your younger players. It's sad, but you have to do that. I was lucky. I seem to be able to retain most of the very good young players here.
Yes, and that's where we are. That's why I'm gutted about Rob leaving today, because he gave us an avenue for our younger players, especially with the two that are in there, Joe Johnson and Zach Nelson, who have been given a chance, and that gives our other youth players the impetus and the encouragement to go forward themselves. So he was brilliant at it. We're hoping that obviously he's gone now, but that the actual basics of the group is still there at the moment. They're still asking for players to come across, because it's massive for us as a youth department to get success stories, and that's what you guys are about. You've supported us unbelievably over the years, and without your help we would miss you. So we need your help, but you need us. You need to see the positives from us as well. So we need to get players through, because at the end of the day we're not a charity. I know you help us, but the club can't focus and keep it going if we don't produce players. So we're under pressure, but you need a manager who's susceptible to wanting younger players like the Gaffer used to be, you know, and we need that, and Rob was brilliant for that. So we're going to miss him, we're gutted, but we've got to move on, and we've got to produce players that can help us win games.
Yeah, there's two things on. It's fine margins, and it's so difficult.
Incredible.
And Rob's career was Forest Green, Watford here, and very good success came at Forest Green and here. And I was at Bristol Christmas, and I saw the Bristol City game. Twine got a goal from 25 yards, just hit it, and it flew in. So that was the first defeat. Then they go to Swansea and get beat 2-1. I think late goals there. Norwich, they come back, late goal there, and then free goal at Queen's Park Rangers. And sometimes the odds can just stack up against you. So there is a certain amount of luck. You can make your own luck to a certain extent, but you have to have good players. And we just briefly on Rob, the reason why, several people have asked me, why, what was the difference between last year when you're getting narrow defeats against very, very good players, £100,000 a week players, ridiculous money, and you were losing by 1 goal. And the difference is maybe very small. It may be that you lost the left wing back through injury, who created chances by his crossing with his left foot, Doughty. And also up front, you lost a creative player, Barkley, who everyone knew last season was the brains behind making the chances for your two front runners. And then the front runners haven't been able to score this season. They haven't had that supply. So there's always different parts of the team that contribute towards a manager's, you could say, downfall, but it was difficult. And can I just say on the academies, what they produced here, and what many people wouldn't know, I know myself just by keeping an eye on Luton over the many last years, of all the players that have left to different clubs, to Chelsea, to Arsenal. Fortunately, both Johnson and Nelson came from Tottenham, so you got 2 back the other way. But when I think of the De Silva boys, are we going to name some names? Patino went to Arsenal. Jack Wilshere was a boy here. No one ever mentions it. He started at Luton. He never started at Arsenal, Jack Wilshere. He was a Luton player. Tell me a few others. Vickers recently went to Brighton, centre half.
Pennington's just gone 2 years, still waiting for the bloody money. Got a Newcastle, so it's a 14-year-old left footer.
So a category, Wayne can explain later, but a category club, a Category 1 club can just be a vulture. They get players for next to nothing, and they put big money down if they make the grade eventually. Well, if they make the grade eventually and play for a Premiership club, automatically they're worth, 4 or 5 million or more. So of course it's nothing to them to pay extra money then to the club that brought them through.
Yeah, and interesting with that as well though, especially, I don't know if you remember the first time I ran the youth set-up was 2012, 2015, and we was in the National League. And it was really weird because our youth team was here, and our first team was here at the time. You know, our youth team was in the quarterfinals of the FA Youth Cup. We were getting wanted all over the place, our players with their potential, but we had a massive problem that the 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old, if he got to 18, his potential fell through the floorboards because he wasn't playing in the nutty National League. So managers and scouts would say, well, why ain't he playing in the league? So we had to be very careful that we ended up selling players because we were skinned, that we needed to get players for the youth set up, get players through because we weren't getting, no players were protected by the league contracts. So we had to make sure that we got money for players that were being poached by what David's saying. But you had to do it at 12, 13, 14, 15, because if they got to 17, 18 and didn't progress, it wasn't like they could be protected in under 21 football because it didn't really exist. So you had to be going into the first team at 18 in the National League, which wasn't pretty. So these developing kids had nowhere really to go, where now we don't want to sell them, we don't need to sell them, we're trying not to sell them because we need them in our first team because the football's that much better, much more cultured, and we've got somewhere for them to sit. When they leave the youth team at 18, they can come and play in our under 21 situation, but also go out on loan because you're going out from the Championship or the Premier League as last year, going down somewhere. Where are you going to go on loan from the National League? You're going down, down and down if you're going out on loan. So it was a hard time, them 3 years. But the minute you guys, with your help, and obviously the first team got back in the Football League, then it became a process that was so much easier for us to, if you like, keep hold of our players. And that's what we're trying to do now, massively. Because Joe Johnson now, for instance, if he goes out on loan this January and somebody really fancies him, he's worth a few quid. Whereas if we lost him 18 months ago, he's only going for a bit of potential money. So Zach Nelson now has played, regularly, just starting to play regular in the first team. We need that to continue because we need our young 18, 19-year-olds to be playing regular in the first team or being in the squad regular because that's huge to us.
And it's very hard for young players when they come into a losing group or a team that's losing situation, where it's far easier to put a young player into a team that's winning well. I remember my debut for Nottingham Forest. I played about 8 consecutive games, but the team was struggling, and it's much easier to go into a team that's doing well, where the other players are have confidence, and they will encourage you as well. So I think that's quite important. So when these boys go out on loan, and if they do out on loan, it's so important to place them at the right type of club.
At the right level.
For example, a club that plays what I call good football, a manager who's going to play them, not just keep them on the subs bench. He'll have sometimes the difficult environment of a men's dressing room, as opposed to an academy dressing room. You're going from adolescence to playing amongst men. And it is much tougher. It's far more frenetic football. It's not so intricate, if you like, particularly the lower leagues. The lower leagues at the moment haven't improved, in my opinion. Although there's so many boys in the academies who are moving down, they're not able to play in 3rd and 4th division because it's so tough. So they go, believe it or not, they lost to the game, they take jobs, and at 22 or 23, their mates remind them, they're playing Sunday football now or whatever, that they've got some ability. I'll give you an example, a boy at Wickham at the moment called Coney. He was immigrant, homeless, and Wickham picked him from an 8th tier club in London. I've seen this boy, I think he's quite good. He's got quite a chance of improving and doing well. But they've got to go into a team that really encourages them. And sometimes it's very hard because the manager at the lower league, in any league, is fighting for results. And sometimes he can't afford to put the youngster in. He wants men, he wants strong men, he wants physical players. And so it is difficult for young players now to be able to come in and play in first team football just like that. You have to be outstanding, really outstanding, like the boy Nanware at Arsenal, who's a fantastic player at or Dibbling at Southampton.
And mentally
Very good
strong,
player.
Dave. They've got to be mentally strong.
And they've got to be mentally strong, of course, but academy football is so important, but there's much of a difference, and Wayne can explain to you about having what's called the Dome, where in Category 1 club, and then in Category 2 and 3 club, with lesser facilities.
Yeah, and that's what we're hoping for. It's happening. We are going Cat 2. Gary Sweet's on it every day. Obviously he's got bigger fish to fry today in the next few weeks, but we have to pick our moments when we have our meetings. But we all know where we're going. We've got a target of where we're going. We know it's at the Secretary of State in a minute with the planning application for the dome over the road by the school. You've got the flight path problem, which obviously has to be done in consideration, but we are going the right way. The club support us brilliantly with our offices, which some of you have come and had a look at, which helps us massively, because then that releases rooms for our education rooms and our meeting rooms, our analysis rooms, all the stuff you need now to go Cat 2. We're there, except we got no grass. So that's a little bit of a problem. Playing football with no grass is a bit tricky. But I got told off today. Oh, you loved it today. Because today we're going training today, and I'm desperate to get on a bit of grass. And the 18s, the under 18s, are out taking all the sheets, rolling all the sheets off for the first team to train. And as they're rolling them off, I'm thinking, this is quite soft anyway. I reckon we can get on pitch 3, because we can't get anywhere near pitch 1 or 2. So I meander over to pitch 3, and the groundsman's going crackers. And I'm going, you're doing all right. And he come flying over and he went, you've ruined me grass. I went, it's soft. He went, no, I don't know if we've got any gardeners, but he said, the fact you've walked on that with a little bit of frost, you've killed the grass. He said, no, I was telling you not to go on the grass. I thought he was having a laugh. I said, I was waiting to. I said, so us training on here ain't going to happen today then. He went, that was the end of my day with the grass. But we struggle. He won't let us on the grass because it's pristine with the first team, but we need grass. So we need to get over the road, have the dome, get the grass pitches.
One of the biggest advantages is the discrepancy between Premier League clubs and clubs not in the Premier League. I've seen plenty of Premier League games. It's 13 grounds, just watch if you can get a snatch on the television. 13 or 14 groundsmen forking at half time to make that pitch as pristine. They're taking up any loose bits of grass. 13 or 14 people.
We got 3.
That's good, that's right.
Dickie,
That's right.
Jeremy,
At one time we had Dick Wassell was one. Who was after Dick? The current man.
Dickie now, yeah.
I keep forgetting his name. Yes, so
Fred was
the
in there.
groundsmen at these clubs, people who are called under the radar, sometimes I'd probably like to write a book about them. The washerwoman, Reenie, was here for so many years.
You going to write another book? Give us a chance.
So it's these people that work behind the scenes that are the lifeblood of the club, you know, people like John Buttle and people who've been here, George Rogers when I was here, so many people. Who was the bus driver?
Jim McCabe, and he texted me New Year. Brilliant.
Yeah,
and I went,
yeah, I know he was a bus driver, just always went the wrong way, didn't he?
He did.
One of the funniest stories about bus drivers, we go from one thing to another. You have to stop the rambling if you want us to stop. This is a true story, and I've just written about it for someone. Brian Clough came here once with Forrest, and someone maybe remember this, someone can say it didn't happen, but I was told it definitely happened. There was a car blocking the Forest bus in the car park, and he went into one of the suites. It wouldn't have been this one, it had been downstairs.
Right. Okay.
And they said, who owns that car? It's in the way of the bus. And so someone put the hand up and said, that's my car. Give us the keys. So he was in awe of the great Brian Clough. He gave Cloughie the keys of the car. This is a true story. This is a true story. And Clough got in his car and drove it about 400 yards towards the bottom of Farley Hill. They came back, they gave the keys to the bloke, said your car's at the top of Farley Hill, pal. Then, meanwhile, of course, the Forest bus, it would move from the Forest. They just moved off to Nottingham as soon as Cloughie. And also Cloughie, he drove the bus from the hotel after the pre-match meal. He drove the bus down to when he was at Hartlepool United. But I was rambling then.
Brilliant. That's fantastic.
Is John Martin on your Christmas card list?
Yeah, John Martin of Alton, the referee.
Yeah.
He's an assessor now. Unfortunately, there was no assessors then, they would have banned him. But, yeah, John Martin, David Ellery once at Sheffield Wednesday. You have a Jack Sharp once said he had a black book. But there's always 3 or 4 referees who had a massive influence on something that happened in your career. And one was David Ellery. He stopped us getting into Europe at Sheffield Wednesday. The last kick of the game, free kick he gave, goalkeeper coming out the box, goalkeeper sent off for handling the ball, and the Redknapp of Liverpool scored with a free kick, 1-1. Cost us. He cost us definitely, in my opinion, at Villa Park, whatever he says. And then there was a referee called Calvin Morton, who once gave, I think, 4 penalties in one game. That was his record, I think. It might have been 4 or 5. He wanted the record, but it was at Crystal Palace, and Clive Allen was involved. And Clive was involved in about 10 London clubs, wasn't he? Or is there 10 London clubs? He was involved in a lot of London clubs. But Calvin Morton, I was at Leicester this time, and in the last 10 minutes, he sent off 2 of my players who were aggressive players, a lad called Mocklin and a lad called Walsh. As it happened, after I left, Brian Little came in and he settled them down, and they did really well. But they both got he sent both off in the last 10 minutes. We lost a cup tie, and strange enough, it was at Millwall, and it was an important game because I was on the precipice, you know, struggling. And funnily enough, my first game for Luton was at Millwall too, which I always remember because it was 4-0 not to Luton.
Mr. Naughty Goal.
I remember we had to play that goalkeeper who came from Dover. Can anyone remember his name?
Yeah, Tony Knight. Tony Knight, wasn't it?
Tony Knight, yeah. We had to play Tony Knight in goal at Millwall. That was my first game. We had to put the reserve goalkeeper in.
He suffered with the cysts. Do you won't remember this, but he used to have to keep, every time he dived, he used to have an explosion, and he ended up having incisions in his leg to release the cysts. Cysts, oh my God, it was a nightmare.
We came from Dover. We had some great goalkeepers, didn't we? Jürgen Sommer. We had Jake was special. Jake was special, no question about that. But Alexic, of course, Milja Alexic. We got Milja Alexic. Was very good.
The nugget, Seeley.
We took Milja Alexic down to Tottenham. We needed the money. We took him and Paul Price. Paul Price is a great story, if anyone wants to hear it. Paul is passed away now in South Africa, I think it was.
Oh, Pricey?
Or I'm getting mixed up with
Milja. He's still alive. I know he is. He's alive in Australia, not dead in South Africa. I'll give him a belt tomorrow until I go to South Africa.
Find out if he's still there.
Price and whatever you do.
Anyway, we took the Paul Price. Bill Nicholson was interested in Paul Price at Tottenham, and they were playing Wales. He was picked for Wales to play at Wrexham against Georgia, I think it was, and they had a very good side. They were Tbilisi had just won at West Ham about 5-1, an outstanding side. They had this wonderful player called Kishnivelli. Anyway, the bottom line was, I said to Bill Nicholson, I'll tell you what, Bill, I'll go with you. I'll go with you. He didn't know me too well. Meet you at Toddington or somewhere. It was Toddington, and we'll go together. Because we needed to sell Paul. And the truth was, I had a wonderful experience. Can you imagine sitting in a car for 2.5 hours with Bill Nicholson? Very educational. And I was very young, because Paul was in that first group of players when I came here. And Paul played well at Wrexham, and we sold Paul to Tottenham. Paul and Amelia at the time, which was, you know, quite a good coup for the club, really. But we recovered.
Oh no, yeah.
Was he a Cyril Beach player? Paul Price.
Sorry?
Was he a Cyril Beach player?
No, Cyril Beach was a Welsh scout. He played for Swansea City, Swansea Town. Was it Swansea Town at the time? With Terry Medwin, Mel Charles, wonderful team, Ivor Allchurch, Len Allchurch. Swansea were a great side. Played in all white, and because we had a tragedy at Swansea when we drew 2-2, and we had a goal disallowed, didn't we? Can you not remember?
Was that a tragedy or someone died?
Well, that's a very good point, because that's an absolute wrong word to use in football. And some commentators do use it. They say it's a disaster or a tragedy or a holocaust or something stupid, and they don't realise. But you're quite right, Wayne, actually. No, that was the 2-2 game at the Vetch Field, when we needed to win it really. And we went up in the last game to Bolton. We had to win by 2 clear goals. We won 3-0. And just up the road at Preston, Toshak Swansea also won, which kept us down by goal difference. But of course the following year we did it. What were we talking about, Wayne?
Cyril Beach and Johnny Arts and all the Irish gangs.
Cyril Beach
Welsh lads.
it was a fullback in that Swansea team, so his next player. He used to write these very long letters, so every month I would have a really long letter which you could hardly decipher what it you know, and we didn't have a handwriting expert in the club, we couldn't afford to employ one. So we had to try and decipher what he was saying about all these players, and he used to send us so many, and they used to come up on a Sunday morning. He used to bring not a caravan, but a mobile with about 5 seats. Hartson, Pembridge, Kerry Hughes, Nogan,
Jason Rees.
The one I missed that came and we didn't take was a lad called Andy Melville.
Yeah, centre-back.
And he went on to play for Wales and play for Oxford. So he was a wonderful scout. And then I look back, and I mentioned it in the book actually, scouts who do a tremendous amount of work in the grassroots. They go out in all kinds of weathers, and they get great satisfaction for one of their players who they recommended doing well. And it's a wonderful thing. And I used to appeal to schoolmasters particularly, that if they were interested in helping the club, in Luton at the time when I first started, they're welcome to make recommendations and we'll follow them up. But I'm sure when we sold John Hartson, now it's a terrible thing to say, for £2.5 million, I don't think Kohler, who was the chairman, or anyone suggested, do you not think we should send £100 to Cyril Beach? £2.5 million we got for a player. And scouts are treated pretty poorly. Give you an example of Brighton. At the end of last season, had a good season. Every member of their staff, whether it's a tea lady or a washerwoman or in the office, everyone got 5% rise on the strength of the club doing well that season. That was Brighton last year, who are a good club.
Brilliant. No, brilliant. Hang on. We've just had we've just advertised for a local scout for Bedfordshire because we're expanding with the Cat 2 situation. We're trying to expand our recruitment, which we desperately need to do at youth level, and we've had 54 applicants.
That's very
That
good.
want to come and work for the football club.
Yeah.
They're not doing it for the money, I can tell you that.
No, it's not.
So we're really pleased. We've got it down to 8 and we're interviewing 6. So that comes through today, which is really heartening, that they want to work for the club, they want to do it locally. We've got scouts now gone back in Ireland, David.
Yes, I heard Seamus Heath is helping you in Ireland.
You're doing a little bit, yeah. We've got North London covered now, which we need to get hold of because there's a great rock bed of players out there that we need to get into, and we need to keep an eye on the home counties. So we've got 2, with the third one that's going to be employed. We'll have a good look at the local area, which has been so hard for us to do in the past because it is about money. You know, there is certain people that want to do something for nothing, but 9 times out of 10, they're not the best. You know, you want people like schoolmasters and people to recommend, but you've got to follow that recommendation up. So if they get it wrong once, you don't believe them the next time, because it takes a lot of time to follow up on a player. It's not just a question of going, oh right, bring him in, because you can't just bring him in. You have to go and follow up the recommendation to look at him, monitor him, then bring him in, because when you do bring him in, he's got to be semi-successful. He can't be way off the level. So there's a lot of work goes into it, and we're just now expanding that, because it is hard to fight off the clubs in and around London, in and around the home counties, but we've got a lot to offer. The more they see players get into the first team and there's a pathway, it helps. And with the facilities now getting better and better, except for the grass, we had a lad the other day from Tottenham and we made sure we trained on the grass for a day. He ain't got a clue. But when he does come back, hopefully he's going to sign. He knows hopefully next year will be on the grass, but it is difficult. So you don't want the better players who come in not to know there's no grass for them, because we need grass.
There's a pathway at this level, there's no question. If there's a good boy, they can progress him and he might get a chance. He won't get a chance unless he's exceptional, and I mean exceptional. He won't get a chance at a Premier League club easily, and that is true. And if I had a son now who was at decent quality and there was a Premiership club and a good club, like in the past I used to say to boys, think about a Leicester. I remember quoting boys, Leicester, Ipswich, Luton, I'm going back a few years ago, what I call middle of the road clubs. They'll have more chance of progressing at that type of club than they will at the biggest clubs. There's another argument that says if they go to the biggest clubs, they can always come down if they don't make the grade. But you get more opportunity at a lesser club who are building and are determined to give opportunities to young players. It's as simple as that, really. It has to be a philosophy of the club. The club has to say, more or less the board, the management of the club, that they say to the incoming manager, whoever that may be, when they decide what philosophy or what type of manager they want to come in, and it's very apt now, of course, what will happen here at Luton, that the manager has to buy into what the club want to do, and the club has to be dead honest with the manager and say, well, every 2 or 3 years we need a transfer excess of £400,000 or £500,000 to keep the club nice and level. And by the same token, we want you to encourage youngsters and also to come clean about what's in the kitty, you know, to buy. You know, it's hard. I mean, I was encouraged to come to Luton because I went to play on Wardown Park, pitch and pot, with Ray Whittaker and John O'Rourke.
Did you win?
No, I can't remember, but I certainly, they persuaded me that this club, and then Bob Redhead took me to Sockwood Park and showed me this big expansive ground where we were going to have a great new stadium. 1963.
It won't be long.
55,000.
1963, and I don't think they had an airport then. They only had one hotel. I remember that when I came to Luton, there was only one hotel. In 1963, I think it was the George in near the what was that? Was it Mac Fisheries? That shop near Sainsbury's down the bottom.
Sometimes, Dave, I can't help you.
Yeah, well, there was a shop there. It's all been quality now, and it knocked down on it. I don't know.
We're going quickly where we are in the youth setup. We have got a really, really top group of coaches now. Paul Benson's done a great job. Luckily, we semi-started together 18 months ago when Paul Hart left, and we put a massive onus on quality coaches. And I suppose you know that Ronnie Henry's joined us as well, and that's a great add to the group. With Joe Deeney's come back, who's a top coach, right down, literally down to the under-9s, all the league coaches now are quality coaches, and we're all on the same page of how we want to play. We want to be progressive and realistic. We're not going to play fantasy football where we just play 27 passes in our own box when we're not good enough to play that, and we don't want to play that because you've got to understand there's quite a few of the players that why we want the 10% coming through, 15% tops coming through and appearing for our first team if we're lucky. I'm exaggerating a bit there. That tells you that 85%, 90% are leaving. And if they're leaving, they ain't going there. They're going there. And the last thing they're going to be doing when they go there is playing 27 passes in the penalty box. So you've got to educate them in the real world of how to play football, and we're all on the same page now. They're in the right place. Suck people into play short, suck them into clip it to the front. If they don't come after you, keep playing. If they come after you, get it into the front, play off the front. You say to your midfield players, any midfield player, can you get the ball off the back? Can you get the ball off the front? Simple, that, isn't it?
But every team wants a good goal scorer, and you're going to have someone. I mean, Harry Haslam said to me, you've got to have someone who the crowd can come on a Saturday and hang their hat on, so they know they're going to get something from the front man. And if you go back, as far as I can remember, you've got Ron Davis, you've got Malcolm MacDonald, you've got John O'Rourke, we had Mick Harford, we'll probably name a couple of others.
Spaney and Walshy.
Well, they
were different, but boy, you can hang your hat on them.
But they were outstanding. But you need someone who, when the club comes and the crowd come and anticipate the game on the Saturday, they've got someone who they think, I've come to watch so and so today. He'll get a goal for us. So you've got to find a centre forward. It's not easy to do. But you've got to try and do your best to get someone, as I say, who's a real personality player in the team, as well as everything else. The team's more important than the individual, but it's good if you've got someone who's a really really top player, and particularly a centre front man who scores goals.
And a good captain. And a good captain.
Or leader, or we go on to leaders, we go on to talk about my favourite leader, Horton. Horton was a special, very, very close to me. I'll tell you one story about Horton, which isn't in the book. So one day, we had Mark Ainsworth here. He wasn't here too long. We signed him from Newport County for £40,000. He was already 17, and he was taking the corners, free kicks, very good left foot. Came here and played left back, of course, for a while before we replaced him with Richard Money, which was interesting. A left-footed left back, and then we went for Richard Money. And Richard at that time was a steady person, regardless. But
Don't forget to come here and manage and upset a few.
But so Mark Ainsworth, so I rang down from the office one morning before we started training, and I shouted to John Sheridan, can you tell Brian to come up and see me? I was very close with Brian. Brian was a great conduit between the dressing room and me. The players trusted him, I trusted him. It was just a good leader. And so he came back to the dressing room after he'd been to see me, and Ainsworth said to him, have you been seeing your mate again? And Horton said to him, yeah, I've been seeing to him, and you're not playing Saturday.
And it was true.
It was true, yeah, it was true.
There's a few leaders on those pictures, isn't there? Looking at Terry Branston.
Yeah, Branston was a leader, for sure. Matt Woods, can people remember Matt Woods? Matt Woods was very good, a leader, big, strong centre-half. Often the leaders are centre-backs. Max Saxby might have had a good career here, but for injury. And of course Steve Foster was a leader. I always felt if we had, when you look at your team, I didn't say I had a prejudice. I never had a prejudice against young, small players. You can't say I did, because when you look at Walshy and Precy, outstanding smaller players. But I did turn down during my career one or two players who were smaller. But when I used to go in the tunnel before the game, or walk out and the team's waiting in the tunnel, and I looked at Foster and I looked up to Harford, and I think I'll be all right today. Spot on.
Questions?
I don't know how we're doing, but if you want to ask questions,
Yeah.
I was going to say, do we want to have a quick break for a moment? If we have a quick break, and then we can do some questions and answers afterwards. So a couple of things. I know David's got some books with him, and I know he's
I
having
only bought 11 because, quite frankly, I'm absolutely staggered and delighted that there's so many people here. I think it's wonderful. I think the academy is so important for the club, and to support the academy is something that's, what I can't expect, not just rewarding, but it's proper. It's real support. It's not those people that are shouting for the manager to get the sack after 4 losses or something like that. Luton people, simple.
So
do you want to buy a book?
Of the players that you've worked with, who have you found the most easy and reliable to manage, and who's been the most frustrating?
A lot of players were quite easy to manage. I mean, some players were difficult, some players had a difficult side. I suppose, in a way, Big Mick was not easy to manage because he was such a physical player, a strong player, and sometimes you had to hold him back without being too strong. At the same time, when we did have, clubs feared playing against us, because I remember Mick getting done by Sam Allardyce and him. I'll tell you one story about Mick. I mean, it's a very difficult question for me to answer because there's so many players who I was comfortable looking after. I found it hard at Sheffield Wednesday because there's a lot of ex-players who were internationals like Hurst, Pressman, Des Walker, Sheridan, Waddle. They were all coming to the end of their careers. And one manager once described that group of players who were 32, 33 as the arty crafty age, where they're worried about pursuing their careers, longevity, because they were being overtaken by younger players in the club. So there became a problem in the dressing room. And I also had, I've got the answer to it, I also had Di Canio. I bought him myself. And Di Canio was very difficult to manage. And Carboni, very good player. The two of them were good players, but they played when they wanted to play. Di Canio was a fantastic player, but he was you know, I'm afraid he was, can we use the word mad?
Passing one off.
Well, he was partially mad. It was very, I mean, he'd do all sorts of things that it just shocked you. I mean, he stood in the dressing room, refused to go out at half time. I said, we already had an injury, we were down to 10 men, and he didn't want to go. Anyway, I won't go on to about Paolo, but he was certainly, I would say, the most difficult player to manage. Most of the players, particularly here, were easy to manage.
I was easy, I just sold 11 of your books. You managed me, you asked me to do it, and there you go, 220 in your back bin.
At least we sent you to Coventry.
You do.
And you didn't have to travel far. No. It made it easy. I could have sold you to St Mirren.
That's all right.
Brilliant. No, that's a good question.
Obviously in the 80s we had a lot of controversial things around the club, plastic pitch being one of them. What was both of your views on the plastic pitch and how that worked from a playing point of view and a managing point of view?
Well, it's quite interesting because I got sold as it was laid, and I come back with Coventry and won 1-0. The first game you lost on the plastic. It was the game against Coventry.
We like to call it. I get very annoyed with the commentators, and I'll even get annoyed with Wayne if he continues to call it plastic. It's called artificial,
Which is mainly plastic.
Synthetic.
Yeah, synthetic, David.
That's it.
3G. In that days it was 1G.
David Evans came to us one day. It's a board meeting, John Smith, David Evans, all the rascals, and they were saying, we've got to have it, it's worth £250,000 a year. We've got the local companies all want to train on it, it can be used 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. It's a life. And there came Walter Winterbottom at the time as head of a committee who came to inspect the first artificial pitches, and they practiced, they did the ball bounce, they did the long kick, and they said they were happy with it. It wasn't the artificial, the grass and the syntheticness, it's the base underneath it that made it, shall I say, people worried about the ball bounce. And what it did was, I can remember fearful, because we had to let the opposition train on it on a Friday. It's part of the regulation. I can remember watching Manchester United here and seeing Mark Hughes hitting 30-yard shots on the artificial pitch. And I thought, Christ, we've got to play them tomorrow. But we managed it. But the thing is, you couldn't play what I call straight balls, too many long balls, too many straight balls. You had to pass the ball, angled passes, quick passes, and also from defenders, and I make a point really of Mal Donegan more than anyone on this, you had to stay on your feet.
Yes.
And some of the players improved immensely, Wayne will tell you, by playing on the artificial. They had to stay on their feet and they had to control the ball quickly and pass it early. And we were very successful on it, because we were the first team to play on it at QPR. We won the game. And but anyway, there you go. And there's an irony about this, which I have to tell you. Years and years later, much years later, I wasn't here, and they wanted a committee to be formed to investigate artificial pitches. And they formed a committee, which was a man called Stott of Oldham. He was the chairman. I can't remember the other. I always remember Mr. Stott of Oldham. He used to wear a big flower in his buttonhole. A broad man, and he oversaw a very good Oldham side at that time with the likes of, tell me some of the players, Wayne, come on.
Frankie Bunch.
No, before Joe Royal's time, they were a good side. Holden was playing in it, the full-back that went to Manchester United, Irwin, they had a very good side. Anyway, we're talking about artificial pitches?
Plastic.
So it was worth a lot of money, but I was on a committee, and I'm not saying that I voted against it. I might have sat there silent, but they decided, the Football League decided to outlaw them. And the strange thing is now, FIFA, they play women's internationals, so many countries abroad that have different weather conditions to us play on artificial pitches. International youth tournaments are playing on artificial pitches. And I'm shocked and surprised, mainly in Scotland, of course, they're playing on artificial pitches, but I'm shocked and surprised that more clubs haven't tried to make a push in the modern era to help them financially to get
I think there's a
artificial
big
pitches.
push in the National South now. I think you go to watch games, Hemel Hempstead, etc.
Yeah.
There's a few in that level now because obviously they've seen it as a money spinner where they can rent
Yeah.
it out. Obviously at lower levels where they need to make
I think in years ahead there will be more
technology's
artificial
got better and
pitches.
better in it as well, to be fair.
Yes.
The technology's got so much better.
Yes. And of course it was worth a lot of money. David Evans, they wanted it. I couldn't vote against it, they wasn't. And I went for it. I thought it helped a lot of our players improve. Obviously we showed good quality on the pitch, and other teams had a fear factor before they came here. They decided they couldn't play on it, particularly people like Liverpool. They thought they couldn't play on it, so we should have told them to stay at home. Yeah. Can you remember that incident after I left when David Evans was in charge and you had to fly to Liverpool to play a game in the snow? Yes. Can you remember? Yes. And Liverpool went crazy because we didn't travel to Liverpool. I wasn't here at the time.
Yeah.
And I think we got fined by Liverpool for we should have seen the weather forecast and travelled the day before or whatever. But Luton got into a lot of trouble for that.
Yeah, I remember it vaguely, yeah.
Yeah.
Poor prize on that.
Careers, who was your biggest influence on your careers both before playing, leading up to getting playing contracts, and also because both of you managed in the Football League?
Yeah.
Who was your biggest influence for before you started playing and before you became manager?
David, you or me? Do you want me to go?
Well, no, I mean, I'll tell you I say influences like a hero was John Charles, because he played for Leeds in the very first game I saw at Nottingham Forest. And he was fantastic in the air, fantastic on the floor, never fouled. He was a giant, a man. He was just a wonderful, great player. He went to Juventus. He was a king. So John Charles was an influence. In coaching-wise, a man called Joe Mallett at Nottingham Forest, who was a very, very good coach with the manager then, Johnny Carey. And other people. Peter Taylor was an influence on me, but not so much on the coaching point of view. And then everyone that gave you a chance is an influence. Harry Haslam gave me a chance here. When I had a chance to go with Clough and Taylor, they were going to Brighton after they left Derby, same time. And Harry said he'd like me to come here as a coach, and it suited me tremendously. My wife was from Luton, and I said to Harry one day, Harry, who told you I was a good coach? Why did you take me? He said, I've no idea if you are a good coach. He said, but I like you. And I thought, look at me, what? So that's what he said, I'm sure as I can. I learned a lot from Danny Bergara, who was a very strong-willed, almost arrogant at times, but very, very good coach. And he did a lot for a lot of the young players here. He was definitely a good coach, poor Danny. He's passed away now. But it was a good deal. Harry got Danny Bergara in to coach. And we worked well together, the reserves and the youth team in my first 2 years here.
I was so lucky that I bumped into Danny Bergara as a youth player. So I started off at Lucy Farm. I was encouraged by a guy called Ron Fulbrook, who come and tracked my mum down and said, I want your son to play for me, and my mum scared stiff, said, who are you? And I played for him. And then Dave Morton, who was head of Luton Schools, was a brilliant guy. We all played. We had a team of 11 when you was tracking us all down, and 7 got contracts out of the 11, except Kerry Dixon. Kerry didn't get a contract, so you'd have been 8, and obviously you don't know about Kerry how well he did. But out of that team of 11, 7 got contracts plus Kerry 8. And the day David sort of signed me as a 16-year-old apprentice in them days for 2 years, I bumped into Danny Bergara. He was waiting for me as I come in, and he was incredible. He'd had us for a year before up Ashcroft School on a Tuesday and Thursday night. We used to bunk off school quite early to get up there. Me, Les Harriott, Mick Pacey from Chorney, and Danny was amazing. We used to spend, honestly, hours manipulating the football. You try and do that with players today, they get bored shitless. And you say to them, pass the ball from A to B, and they go, what are you on about? They can't do it. We did it for hours, right foot, left foot, left foot, loved it. Danny was a great understander of the game and showed you how to do it. So, Gerweni, you little shitty. I said, what are you on about then? He said, hey, you know the pussycat in the garden? I went, yeah. He said, well, that little pussycat in the garden, look at the dicky bird. He's looking for that pussycat. When you're in the midfield, you little shitty, look for the pussycat. Then you'll never get caught. Look for that shitty little cat. And that stuck with you, and you take that into your coaching. Not quite in that, so Lord, you've come under 9 now. Hey, you little shitty. But he was incredible, and he was amazing with his teaching techniques. And then I bumped into the main man with Trevor Hartley and David Coates. And I had 3 top coaches. When Danny left, sadly to go to Sheffield United with Harry, he left us behind, and I was devastated. But luckily, I got signed pro by David on my 17th birthday, so it elevated me out of the 18s really, and trained with the reserves and played regular in reserves. In them days it was magnificent because using the combination, playing against all the big hitters at the big grounds. So though it was reserve football, because now we were talking earlier on, in them days you only had 1 sub. Now you can have 7 subs, they play for 5 minutes and it's an appearance. You know what I mean? So when you look at their career in years to come, they've played 500 games, 290 minutes and 300 for 10 minutes. But in our day, you either played or you didn't play. So for me to break into that great team was, I hated being 13th fucking man. 13th man, go for a away game, Wayne. Sorry. But then you did get into the team and some poor sod was a 13th man. And that was what you was up against. But the coaching of them 3 people, David Coates, always get the ball outside your body. Always get the ball outside your body. Trevor Hartley, never hit a stationary ball, Wayne. If you hit a stationary ball, it's a free kick, it's a penalty. Always start any practice off with a moving ball. All the stuff I've took in, then his brilliant patterns of play going towards goal. Timing of movements, I did it today, funny enough. I did 2 5s today going towards goal with the goalkeepers in, with the timing of the movement, play it, get it around the corner. Remember the Mossy one? Round the front into the striker, get it back, slip the next runner in, 3rd man runs. Brilliant stuff that you learn as a player. And one thing Danny did say to me as a kid, he did say to me, you are a thinking footballer. Because I wasn't naturally quick, naturally powerful, I had to think my way through the game, I had to think my way past you. I couldn't burst past you, I had to play past you. And it made me a better coach because you had to learn the game of everything. So those 3 were massive to me, but the 2 people that started me off, brilliant.
I think you learn from everybody. I mean, you've got to
How not to do it as well, you're spot on.
You've got to take
I met some crap ones as well.
Everyone will tell you something that should resonate with you when you're in football, coaching or management. Even now, even you hear an interview and something clicks and you see something. And the coach develops it in his own way. He does his own coaching. But there may be something that he saw or something that was said that made him develop. I mean, Arsene Wenger at Arsenal used to do very much to the whistle. So I'd have a 45-minute session, and on 45 minutes the session was finished, whatever. I fell down on that because I often did sessions when I saw something developing and I wanted it to continue.
You certainly did, you made it go on.
Yeah.
You should have stopped at your peak.
Again, it might have gone on too long, but the players responded.
They did. He was brilliant. He was brilliant. He was brilliant. And the
But you learn something from everyone. I hear now, Jermaine Defoe at Tottenham, who I signed from West Ham.
I've got a story about him.
Yeah, no, you have. But I can't believe every commentator, when they kick it over the bar, when they shoot over the bar, says he was leaning back.
Oh.
It's because it's a stock phrase. He's bound to be leaning back.
Yeah, right.
It's not necessarily leaning back. It's because his last stride wasn't a short stride.
Yeah. Oh, right.
To get on top of the ball, you've got to have a short
Top half of the
stride
ball.
before you strike the ball. So if you're right on top of it, it's very difficult to get the leverage to lift it. And Jermaine Defoe had a very quick back lift anyway, and he'd shoot from anywhere and score a load of goals, box in the box. But you learn something from everyone, and you take something from whatever game you see. There's always usually something that you can take. Movement in the box of the very best forwards who go and they check and then they go again. Football at its best, it's very skillful. It's a beautiful game at the very best, at the very best.
If you draw a line around a football, like the line going around the Mars planet, if you draw a line around it and you hit underneath that ball, it's going upwards. If you hit the middle to the top half of that ball, it's going straight. If you can get a whip on it, it's dipping. But you've got to hit the middle to the top half of the ball. So when you next see someone blaze it over the bar, it's got nothing to do with leaning back. Because if you think about it, I could go now right on top of a ball. Where's the ball going? Up. Because I'm chipping it underneath the ball. So it's got nothing to do with someone leaning back. It irritates the pair of us when you listen to these donuts that are actually commentating, getting a few quid, and he's gone his length back. I go, oh my God, shut up. But think about it, it's the top half of the ball that keeps the ball down, bottom half of the ball makes it go up.
Yeah. There were some great coaches that we learnt from in early days, Sexton and Malcolm Allison and Don Howe. You know, we used to go to Lilleshall every year for 2 weeks. It was a residential course. And it was amazing what you saw and how different people approached the game. And you were bound to come back full of ideas, and then you develop them yourself. You've got to do your thing yourself. But coaching is fascinating because some players don't respond. You want to hope that some of your players. We did a lot of what's called pattern play, and we even warmed up without a ball. I know this. Without a group. In other words, I just told them, take your positions and imagine you're warming up, that you go to right back, left wing Mossy, right back Stevens, go to where your position is. I want you to run, jump, twist, turn. I want you to warm up without a ball in your own time. I used to watch them. You know, it's amazing. You had to fall down, then they had to jump up and get the ball, then you had to pass it back to the goalkeeper and turn round. It was amazing. They had to use their imagination just to get us a warm-up instead of having this warm-up which they do now. They all go in twos and run between cones and pretend that they're getting fit or something.
The only downside of that was we went 1-0 down, wasn't it? We had a practice kicking off, didn't we?
Yeah, we did have some daft ideas. But the daft ideas sometimes paid off.
They certainly did, they were brilliant.
Yeah. Any questions from the floor? I've asked a couple, and there's been a couple that have been mailed in. One over the far corner, sir.
You talk about the technology of the pitch. What about the technology of the ball, football itself? How's that changed?
Well, it's a lot lighter, but I can't go back as far as David. They talk about a sandbag.
Well, when I started playing, there definitely was a lace in the ball, which there isn't now. I think there's a famous story about Finney or Matthews playing the ball to maybe Lofthouse or whoever it was, maybe in that Lofthouse, and Nat said, next time, Tom, when you cross it, can you make sure the lace is...
Don't land on me foreign.
The balls was definitely heavier then. The fascinating thing about dementia is that I'm not convinced myself, and I'm not a scientist, and I'm not a medical man, but I think a lot of the dementia cases are coming from centre-halves and centre-forwards who clash. And if you see a lot of headers, if you see a picture of someone heading a goal, often he's being challenged as he heads it. And sometimes their eyes are shut as they head it. It's true. You just watch. Unless you get a completely free header, of course, in the box, which you're unlikely to get. But most is under challenge. And I think it's the continual player who plays for many years and is continually getting knocks on the head over a period of years. Not passive heading. I don't think passive heading, I wasn't a header of the ball, but certainly other players I knew that just, we headed in training, of course, but they were, you know, passive heading is no problem. And funny enough, in all the coaching books, someone challenged me once. I was at a youth match at Arsenal, and a man called John Cartwright, who managed the England youth team. Yeah. And he said to me, he said, "Have you know, which coaching books have you read recently?" Anyway, I can't remember what I said. He said, "There's not one book where there's a chapter on heading. There's not one book on coaching where there's a chapter on heading, which is a big part of the game." Mick Harford, Steve Foster, Paul Elliott couldn't, but they could write a book on heading. Deflected heading, heading for power, heading for clearing. Yeah. And in lower league football, in actual fact, I see quite good headers of the ball, particularly defenders. The ball is in the air far more than at Premier League level, but some of the heading in the lower leagues is very good. Certainly heading for distance. Some of the big, strong centre halves can really head that ball. It was fascinating, wasn't it? In this FA Cup, was it the FA Cup where the League Cup semi-finals, where they're supposed to have used a Puma ball instead of an Adidas ball within the last couple of days.
That's what he was moaning about, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Arteta.
Arteta was moaning about it.
Yeah.
But they used it for 4 previous rounds, though.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, but they lost
maybe we missed something. Maybe the ball that Arteta saw was square. I don't know.
But just touching on that, just quickly touching on that, the technology of balls and the situation of heading, not the balls, is that we in our coaching programme now, we are very conscious of making the lads, or helping the lads, teaching the lads how to head a ball. Because we can go get a Cat 1 lad on try list, 6 trialists come in, 6'2", Arsenal, Tottenham, Chelsea, centre back. You throw a ball up in the air, he literally can't hit it. Because he's spent 8 years playing tippy-tappy football at the highest level, where he's just played through the thirds. He can't hit a 30-yard clip into the front, and he can't hit a ball when it comes 30 yards the other way. So straight away, alarm bells, think to yourself, Jesus Christ, what are we going to do with him? He looks absolutely gorgeous. He turns up, he's beautiful, he can slap it 10 yards, he can step off, he can pass 10 yards, he can get it into midfield, he can run. He looks lovely. You clip a ball up, you go, oh my God, don't do that. And you ask him to clip it to the front, oh no, I only played 10 yarders. Well, where's he going? Where's he going in the future if he doesn't play for the top club that literally passed through the thirds, and he's in a game of football that's very rarely in the air? Well, hello, that's what happens. So we have to now educate our lads how to head a ball.
I can remember many years ago when Paul Elliott came here. He's now incidentally vice chairman at Charlton Athletic, so he's gone very high up in the world, Paul, and there's a chance that eventually he might become some, I don't know what you would call it. What do you call it when you become a real bigwig? Anyway, but he's doing very well. But when he came, but when he came to Luton, I always remember, I think it was on the at Vauxhall's, I'd obviously seen this tall, 6'3", wonderful physique, superb speed, great athlete. That Van der Ven of Tottenham reminds me of Paul, you know, he plays a very high line and he loves it because he can catch.
He can show the crowd how quick he is on the way back.
How quick he is on recovery.
Kills the other back three. But
whereas Foster used to sit deep and head everything. But Paul liked to push out. But I remember on his very first session down Vauxhall, I remember turning to David Pleat, and we paid money for him, obviously from Charlton, and thought, what have we done? Because a couple of balls came in the air, and I'm absolutely sure Paul shut his eyes. And to this day, he remarks about that. But he improved. He was very unlucky. He had a terrible injury against Alan Young here of Leicester City, and it caused us a problem. But then we got Foster, which caused me another problem because I had when he recovered, I had 2 top centre halves. So I sold Paul to Villa, and then he went to Italy and to Chelsea and had a very fine career. And of course Foster was just a fantastic leader and captain of the club.
Yeah.
Question number 5. Excuse me, we spoke about the top end, the bottom end. What's happening with footwear today, and what would you recommend for the young potential players to buy, purchase, etc.?
Well, our youth players have to wear black boots because we get so annoyed because the footballs are different now. Honestly, some of the lads wear indoor slippers. You actually look at their feet; they're so soft and so moulded. They've got slip-ons now, and it's really worrying that it's become a fashion thing again. So we make our young players wear a black boot that looks like a football boot. And I am generally concerned that when yes, they're black, but when you pick them up, they're as light as a feather, and there is zero protection. So when you worry about your metatarsals, which is a real bad injury, someone stamping on your foot, you can't tell these lads, you know, but you try and educate them about the footwear, which is about safety. Yes, you've got to get the right size. Yes, you've got to, you know, the days where you wore them in are long gone, but they've actually got to fit you, you know, so fit you like a glove so you can feel the ball. But it is really worrying now where it's just become a fashion item. And you look at the big hitters like Nike, I don't think they're really worried about what actually happens on your foot playing football. It's about the marketing and what it looks like. But at least at the moment we're sticking with black boots.
The old leather football boots we played in were so heavy, it was just...
Yeah, you don't want that, but you don't want dancing shoes either, really.
And of course the studs were different as well, and they had, you know, the studs were nailed in effect, and when you played on hard pitches, like there'll be 1 or 2 hard pitches this weekend, you know, you had to, with a, what was it called, a shaved file, the nail, so it can be quite dangerous.
Well, I remember, you know, it's 40 years ago now, but I remember playing in the ice in that cup run. We played Stoke in the snow.
Yeah.
Had me Luton Town gloves up.
On the replay.
They can come in the museum and all. In fact, you can have everything. You can have me, I'll just stand here. Just stuff me and stick me in a glass cabinet. But yeah, I remember playing in that game, and we had the leather stud. And the ref, you'd put these leather studs in your boots, which was ridiculous, because you went out and within 5-10 seconds, they took the layer of leather off and it left 3 metal prongs. It was like rock climbing. You could literally, and they were brilliant. But if you went in, you know, you just gashed them open, but they used to check your studs before you went out. You went, yeah, have a look at them leather studs, they're lovely and smooth. And within 20 seconds of a sprint or a run, it just exposed
The other thing I've noticed is we used to wear pads, proper pads. And sometimes if you didn't have pads, shin pads, if you didn't have pads, you used to put a magazine.
Yeah. I was going to put your book down there, Dave. Well, I played, I probably had 2 of your books down there.
So you had pads. Now you've got players with socks rolled down, and it's illegal if you haven't got a pad, and they've got tiny pads. I could never play like that.
We've got shin pads, David, you're right, and they wouldn't cover your front teeth.
It's unbelievable.
They're ridiculous.
And I remember a boy called Worthington, Frank Worthington, one of the Worthingtons. There was Dave Worthington, there was about 3 Worthingtons. I remember him doing me at Grimsby, and he almost broke my leg through, you know, going through my pad. So I don't know how these players now, but of course there's not the fierce tackling that we had in those days. I mean, we had tacklers here, but not nasty tacklers. Peter Nicholas, Grealish. Who else Wayne tackled apart from yourself?
Well, they both kept me out, so Nico replaced me actually. Brian put his foot in. Wilson, was decent.
Danny Wilson.
Yeah, put his foot in. Got a great story, Danny Wilson. Seriously, playing away at Forest, he's playing right wing. Yeah. And he don't want to be right wing for Cloughie. You've got me at left back, I don't want to be at left back for you, I want to be in midfield. So me and Danny Wilson have a chat, 2 minutes into the game. Dan, don't do a lot. He went, no, I won't do a lot, I fucking hate being out here. I said, well, you don't do a lot, and I won't do a lot. And we ended up drawing 0-0. Me and him had a right little chat for 90 minutes. Danny Wilson, and then he went in midfield, and I did for 5 minutes, but it was perfect.
He was a nice man, Danny Wilson.
He was a lovely fellow, especially that day.
A question, maybe one's on your list, I don't know. It's to David actually this time. Can you tell us a little bit more insight into your very first game for Luton in 1964? Well, can you remember it?
No, all I know is I was, I think 18 or 19 maybe. I'd come from Luton. I lost my place at Forest. They'd signed 2 or 3 players. It was quite clear they fancied me less than they did the previous manager. Some managers like you, some managers dislike you. I had 3 managers in a very short time. It was about the period of maximum wage, 1961. And they came in and said, Luton want to sign you. And I remember speaking to Peter Taylor, and he said the first team football is so important, playing in front of a crowd. You could play reserve football for the rest of your life. You need to play first team football. Anyway, I came here, I was persuaded. The manager was Bill Harvey. And Bill, when he was talking to you, he told a joke every 2 sentences. He was absolutely a lovely man, but he was useless.
His jokes were.
Yeah. And Harry spoke in mixed metaphors, that was what Harry did. Bill Harvey was a joker, and then George Martin, well done. And George Martin was a disciplinarian. He once at Stock, where were we training now? This co-op club at Stockingstone.
Yeah.
And Graham French,
Great story up
you
there.
know about Graham French, a very fine player. He came here when I broke my leg. He came here from Wellington Town, and because Hodgson, the chairman who took them out of Wembley, Hodgson had that pub, and Mick Cullen used to go in the pub. Mick Cullen was a Scottish international, played about 2 games in Scotland, played at Derby County. He was playing at Wellington, and they had this boy, and he saw this boy French. He said, "You've got to get French to Luton." French came to Luton, and I palled up with him. Actually, I was very friendly with him, really, until he shot someone.
You did pile up on the post office.
Well, I said it's okay as long as you don't shoot me. But anyway, Frenchy came here, and one day at Stockingstone Road, he went along the byline. I'm telling you, he must have beat 3 people. He was strong and he was physical, he could run. Beat about 3 people and tried to score at the near post. And George Martin was refereeing the game from the centre circle in his Crombie coat and a hat. Believe it or not, that's true. He was the manager. He was in the centre circle refereeing a practice match. I remember because it was at the time of Alan Starr and Bruce Rioch. And French went along the byline, shot at the near post. And Martin shouted at him. He shouted at him, "Square it, you silly boy, square it!" You know, pull it back to someone else who was greedy. And Frenchy gave him, he was a young player, bear in mind, 18 years old, and he gave him such a mouthful. And George Martin, I mean, really rude, bad words and everything, and enough to, you know, tell him to clear off, cancel his contract. And all the players heard it, every player heard it. And George Martin was going round to the players, "What did he say? What did he say?" Frenchy was a special man.
Ask a question.
Corner there and then one over there.
Oh, in the modern day football, when there's a free kick outside the area, the magnitude of defenders and attackers that are in the box, and suddenly a wrestling match occurs. Why that? I can't understand when you get hold of a player and throw him to the ground and the game is not stopped. I can't understand that. It becomes a wrestling match where there's a free kick into an area.
Well, because they're trying to prevent a goal in any way possible. Think how the goalkeepers get pinned now. They can't get to the ball. They have to punch instead of catch, a lot of them now, because they're just unable to get to the ball amongst the mass of the 6-yard box. And when there's teams like, not necessarily Arsenal, but all teams, they're making it very difficult for the goalkeeper to clear a path. And the referees, they can't watch everyone. Some players are marking facing the wrong way. Marking players, it's
Ridiculous.
Incredible.
Ridiculous.
But I have to say, we were very good on free kicks. One year Donaghy's got, I think, 8 goals when we played a ball and the man came out to block and we passed it again and Donaghy came up from deeper and drove it. It was a terrific, we had a terrific...
David Moss as well, Mossy did it.
We had some really creative free kicks, there's no question about it. If you ever look back and are lucky enough to see some of the, well, you were there, but somehow what we did at free kicks were different. We always had 2 on the ball. So, and one passed to the other and then run round his back and he took the ball that way, because if you've got 2 on the ball in the middle field, usually there's only one defender stands 10 yards away from you. You put 2 on the ball in the middle field instead of just putting it down and whacking it into the box, which is aimless, which they do now a lot.
We're massive.
Can I explain it, Wayne?
Yeah.
You get up and show
Oh well, you're showing us. We need 2 though, Dave. We need 2 on the ball.
All right.
But going back to what you said, it really does frustrate me that referees. We spoke about it earlier on before we sat down. That the rule of obstruction seems to have totally gone out of the game, and it's got to a stage now where I've got my young goalkeepers. They're playing. I get my goalkeeping coach now, the 2 goalkeeping coaches, to go into the referee before the game and say, "Please, can you stop the opposition forward blocking my goalkeeper from a corner? I don't mind if he stays near him, but he literally turns away from the ball and literally holds the goalie, or he backs in and backs into the goalie and just keeps backing into the goalie, and it's blatant obstruction. But it doesn't seem to be ever given anymore. Obstruction, then it takes you on to the next bit. How can someone get away with pulling someone's shirt like a rugby? Right, so the referees have to stop it. Now, David's right, what'll happen is you give 20 penalties, but do it, because it's ridiculous. And what it does do, it stops young players again understanding, which he coached me, touch tight. So you touch tight people, you get distances from how far the ball is to where the goal is to where your player is, and you judge your distances from how long it takes that ball to travel from A to B for you to get from B to A to get to him. But now they literally play basketball, they literally face the wrong way, grab him, and you go, this is farcical. So again, there's no coaching. You just tell some lemon to hold him and get away with it. And then Mengi did it out here. Do you remember last year? We were doing well in the corner and Mengi just decided to grab someone and then moans when he spins him round and throws him on the floor and he goes, I didn't do anything. I'm thinking, are you sure? You just manhandled him off the ball when the ball hasn't even come in. So it is a frustration, and we're trying to change that by talking to referees at our level before we kick off. Please, don't get me started, but free kicks, spot on again, but I'm obsessed with having two players. Nobody now, by the way, especially in youth football, can line a wall up. Defensive wall, no one can do it. Goalie ain't got a clue. Players don't even face him. Top Premier League clubs do not know how to line a wall up, right? They haven't got a clue. They don't do it. All they do is attacking stuff. They get all these full-time bloody coaching gurus, set play gurus, and they don't know how to line a wall up. So you get two people on the ball, a left footer and a right footer. You tell your two players, look at the crap ball, look at the goalie, he can't see what he's doing, and wherever the gap is, smash it in. Because time and time again, you get one on the ball, and he's never practices it. He thinks he's going to go up and over the wall, like Ronaldo, and even Ronaldo did 1 in 80, right? But they can't do it. So you just go, look at the wall, it's useless. I guarantee they don't know what they're doing. Either left ear or right ear, or like the main man says, when you're deeper, just play, just play.
I always felt there was one player I remember, and you'll remember him very well. He always used to say, one step left, right, backwards or forwards. No need for all of this, and that was Jimmy Greaves. If any man could find a space in the penalty area, it was him. Definitely.
Yes.
Yeah. Greaves was incredible, quick with great control. And he was just tremendous. I played against Tottenham for Exeter City, and we were looking forward to it so much. It was a big game in the League Cup, and we scored, and we went in front. And then Greaves just went on and scored 3 goals, simple as that. It was so easy, he went from the halfway line, he just dribbled past people and placed it in the net. As it happened, we didn't do too bad, we lost 5-3 in a League Cup tie at Tottenham, which was a semi-highlight to my career.
I am conscious of time, and we've still got a raffle to do, so there's time for a couple more questions. There's one over the far side, and then who wants the last question? One at the back there. So one over the far side first, and then you'll have the last questions.
Pundits are always saying that the managers get linked to different clubs and say who we know good for that club because his philosophy of football doesn't suit their style, etc. As a coach, sometimes you have to adapt to what you've got, like the tools you're given. You know, you've got a group of players, and you've got to make the best out of them. You might have this philosophy in your head, but you can't make them sort of players.
Of course. Listen, there's nothing as stupid as Amarin that's come to Manchester United. All the pundits saying, well, he plays 3-4-3. Yeah. Absolute nonsense. He's got to come in, assess what he's got, see what his players' qualities are, see who his better players are in what position, and play accordingly. How can you decide a system to play before you've got to play according to your players' qualities? There's no question about that. I find that strange that that you do get clubs. Oh, we have to play this way. And clubs get, what's the word, stigmatised with certain way. Oh, like I heard someone talking about West Ham today, about the academy. That was years ago. They were known as a good producer of youth football in East London, which they were. But that's gone. And what was the academy? And sometimes they talk about philosophy and strategy and what's that other word? Structure.
Project.
Project. Well done, Wayne. And all these words they come out with. Bollocks.
I think you do have philosophy as a coach. So in your own head, you have beliefs like I'm obsessed with throw-ins. You can't, throw-ins are dreadful. We scream that it's our ball, then we give it straight to them. So you might as well shout it's theirs, and they'll give it to you. But I'm obsessed with throw-ins. You can tell a team that's coached well if they take good throw-ins. Because
what you said earlier about the grabs, there's no penalising foul throws anymore.
no, it's ridiculous. And again, I ask the referees, please, can you stop the foul throws? Can you penalise them? Because it's irritating.
I've got a feeling that I'm not convinced, and I don't know, I should have asked people. There was a change in the law at the start of this season. When I was young, and over the last few years, you had to have both feet behind the line, stationary, and you had to have both hands behind your head before as you throw. Now, this season, if you look closely, they're all playing long throws. Why? Because they've been allowed to lift their back leg.
Yeah,
so they're
it's
getting more,
ridiculous.
what do you call it?
It's ridiculous.
They're,
So we don't know the
lifting
rules
their leg
again.
now. Just to go on to that about throw-ins, David Coates here everyone's brilliant at something. Danny Bogar is brilliant. David Coates was wonderful on throwing.
Yeah, he was.
And I remember Northern Ireland was staying at Harpenden. Danny Blanchflower was manager. And they came here to play us in a practice match before going to Wembley to play England. And George Best was in his prime, and I'll never forget it. It was in that room over there. George Best was waiting, and he had one of his lady friends come to watch the game. A true story. And the players were waiting in the bus after the game. And I remember speaking to Danny Blanchflower, who was another kind of hero, and he spoke about throw-ins. He said, what's all this, he was ahead of his time, what's all this fuss about throw-ins? Now you see 5 or 6 players jockeying, takes 30 seconds before they throw it, because they're all moving around.
All in the way.
All you need is one person.
Eye to eye.
And Danny Blanchflower told me, he said, so simple. He said, as you face the thrower, he's got the ball. If I go there,
you want it here.
I want it there. And if I go there, I want it there. Everyone else, clear off.
Yeah, exactly. That's what he said.
So it's simple things, and you do have that as a coach. You have your own beliefs, but if you're turning up on a new job with your beliefs, you've obviously got to work with the tools you're going to inherit, and then slowly but surely, if you're given the time, you'll work towards what you want. But yeah, the boy Amarin's got no chance of doing what he wants at the minute. He's just got to decipher what he's got and make the best of it, but he won't worry too much.
Gentleman at the back as the last question of the evening.
David, you mentioned your first game for Luton as manager at Millwall, but what are your memories of view of events today? What are your memories of your first match at Kenilworth Road as manager?
As manager? Do you know, I have to tell you that. You've tested me. Last question, and you've tested me. I can't remember at the moment. Mr. Mortimer said when Danny decided to go to, I wanted Danny to stay here. Harry was very clever. He came back from Sheffield. He knew a man at Sandy called Harry Short. He was very friendly with him. He had a lake, and he was very friendly with the man who lost his leg. Who lost his leg? The centre forward at Sheffield Wednesday. Derek Dooley. So then they wanted a new manager. So Harry Short persuaded him that this man at Luton, Harry Haslam, would be a good manager. So Harry came back here and he had 2 envelopes. And he said, there's your deal, David, and there's yours. We didn't know what was in. But I assumed, it was the same offer in as we were going to be like, didn't say first team coach, reserve coach, but he wanted both of us to go. And I spoke with Danny, tried to persuade him to stay here. Once I was told by Mortimer that they're going to give me an opportunity here to manage the club because they'd liked what seen in the reserves. So, and the first few games I had, I was in charge of the team when Roy McCrowan left for America. That was at Crystal Palace, and we drew 3-3. And it was a last-minute goal. I remember that game. Yeah, I think that was my first game in charge of the team. I wasn't yet manager, yeah. So anyway, so Harry left, and there was Mr. Richardson on the board, Mr. Bain.
We want to know what's in the envelopes.
Mr. Hawkins, they're all dead now, so they can't query it. He said, we're going to give you a chance. You know, if I'd lost the first 6, that wouldn't have been here today. That's the way it is. Can I say finally, right, thank you ever so much for the opportunity, but once you've got a loyal Lutonian like Wayne Turner here, who's so wrapped up in football, you've got no problems at all. You've got a really top class lad here who's looking after you.
Couple of things. First of all, David doesn't know anything about this, but shortly emerging from the kitchen, it's someone's birthday. Shortly, 80th birthday. So, first of all, happy birthday, David. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear David. Happy birthday to you. Cristiano, it wasn't me. I'm going to ask David to draw out six raffle tickets, and we'll go through them in.
I'm 64 March the 9th, okay? One is this red or purple? What are you calling that? Red?
I would say.
Okay, pink. Pink, I don't do pink. Pink 141. We got a pink 141 out there?
Yes, well,
We got a pink 141? You just want a cake?
Yeah, as a result of this evening, there is an amount of 745 going to MND Research, which is part of the so we can get that paid through to the research from there. And you don't need me to ask, but please show warm appreciation for our two speakers this evening that I have. To that, I'm also going to add to Helen in particular, who's been a